Hello, it's Blue Orange 22. So I want to do a video about the whole controversy with AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Ted Yoho when he called her a fucking bitch. I don't really usually like using profanity on this channel, but I guess I kind of have to because it's actually sort of the topic I want to talk about. You've probably been seeing this story in the media, but it's not really the story itself that I want to talk about. And like I've said before, this is not really like a political channel. I don't like talking about Democrats or Trump or Republicans or AOC or whoever. You know, it's kind of a men's rights channel. But what I want to talk about is the reaction to this whole story, and specifically the word bitch, and the way a lot of the media has been kind of presenting it as misogynistic and sexist, because it's sexist for a man to call a woman a bitch. To me, I've noticed there's kind of like a double standard here when it comes to words that we use for women and words that we use for men and what's considered offensive. The word bitch and also the word cunt are kind of considered like these sexist words because they're like these words against women, and they're like these words used to offend women in a sexist kind of way. But no one ever really stops to think about the fact that the word dick or the word prick, those are words that are used to insult men. Like, those are kind of specifically male insults, calling a man a dick. But that's not really seen as sexist or offensive. It's like kind of two different rules for the different words. And when you think about it, people say that cunt is sexist because it's basically it's a derogatory and kind of an ugly term for the female anatomy, and it's turning that into an insult. But what is the word dick? Isn't that kind of doing exactly the same thing? So it's kind of like two different rules for men and women and words that you're allowed to use, especially as the words bitch and cunt are sometimes used towards men as well. In Australia, in fact, the word cunt is almost considered a completely different word than it is in the United States. And it's not really considered offensive in the same kind of way. I think in general, too, there's just a difference in the way that you can talk to a man and a difference in a way you can talk to a woman. Like what people would consider rude or hostile or aggressive, it's like two different standards. So if you're like, let's say you're kind of yelling at someone because they almost hit you with their car in the parking lot, or you're just kind of correcting someone who made a mistake. The way people perceive talking to a woman is different than the way people perceive talking to a man. I think people are much harsher on men when it comes to like how you're allowed to talk to a man, how you're allowed to criticize a man, how angry you're allowed to get at a man for whatever reason. Whereas when people see someone say the same thing to a woman, they have kind of a different reaction to it. And I think the way we have different rules for words such as bitch and cunt and dick are examples of that. It's an example of how we have these different standards when the same thing or a similar thing happens to men versus women. So I actually do think, again, I don't want to make this a political channel, so I'm really not going to talk about this story with AOC and Yoho. I do think it was inappropriate for him to say that. It's not really a professional way for one member of Congress to address another member of Congress. But again, this video is really kind of about the media reaction and the way it's being spun as misogyny specifically, rather than just being rude and unprofessional. It's being gendered in a way that I don't think would happen if the genders were reversed.